Ich glaube, beide habt ihr uns sehr viele Denkanstöße gegeben, wie wir jetzt überlegen können, wir als Europäerinnen, als Deutsche, was können wir im Anschluss daran tun, um diese Vision, die eure gemeinsame Vision ist, zu unterstützen oder wahr werden zu lassen? Gut, ich nehme die Fragenden auf.
Ich bin letztes Mal abgeschnitten worden.
Du bist abgeschnitten worden.
Ich auch. Versprochen worden.
Jeder ist schon mal abgeschnitten worden. Okay, Waltraud, Elsa und diese Dame und dann die nächsten danach.
Aber die Leute, die bereits den Mic haben, sie sollen jetzt sprechen, oder?
Wie bitte?
Die Leute, die bereits ein Mic haben.
Nee, wir wollten letztes Mal übersehen und uns ist gesagt worden, und dass wir reden dürfen und war nicht.
Auch noch ein Mikro.
Der kam hier zu mir vorhin. Das ist gut, dass du
okay.
Also
Gibt's noch
Leute dort, die unbedingt sprechen
auch,
okay?
ja.
So,
ja. Jetzt erstmal. Ian, we need another translation set for Ali.
Ich kenne das natürlich nicht. Wie mache ich das an?
Ist es jetzt an?
Nein. Ja, es ist an.
Ja?
Ja.
Ist es an?
Ja.
Gut.
Also, wir haben gestern und heute sehr oft gehört, dass das Wichtigste sei, die Besatzung zu beenden. Und ich hätte gerne, dass wir das mal zu Ende denken. Wenn die Israelis darauf eingehen, hätten wir dann nicht eine Zwei-Staaten-Lösung und würde dann nicht Israel sagen, nach dem Gesichtspunkt, wir brauchen zwei Dinge, so viel Land wie möglich und so wenig Palästinenser wie möglich. Wenn sie dann das größere Israel haben und das kleinere Palästina auch bestehen würde, dann könnten die Israelis sagen, jetzt wollen wir die Palästinenser, die in Israel leben, rauswerfen. Ist das deswegen nicht vielleicht die falsche Parole zu kurz gesprungen oder in die falsche Richtung?
Guck mal, ob es an ist.
Hallo? Ja, okay.
Ja.
Maybe I'll speak in English since you've been. I'm an American living in Berlin. My name is Elsa Rosbach, and I want to ask you, Ilan Pappe, why you think that Israel, or do you really think it's the only colonial project or the last colonial project? I would call that into question. The way that I see it, and even this whole discussion about German guilt, the Holocaust, is that after World War II, the crime... Soll ich auf Deutsch lieber? Okay, dann spreche ich aus. Ich dachte, ihr habt keinen Ohrfon. Okay, ich sage nochmal, ich habe Ilan Pappe gefragt, warum er Israel oder ob es richtig ist, den als der letzte Kolonialprojekt oder und dass ich das als US-Amerikanerin in Frage stelle und von den früheren Debatte heute, wo man sagt, ja, kann man Israel mit zum Beispiel mit Nazi-Deutschland vergleichen. Ich freue mich sehr, dass man sagt, es war eher die neokoloniale Situation. Das heißt, die Verbrechen eigentlich der USA und der UK, die ganze Ausrottung der Indianer, die eigentlich noch mehr waren als die Juden, obwohl nicht so effizient. Es war auch in früherer Zeit, jetzt würden die es auch vielleicht. Und dann auch noch die Sklaverei, ja. Und ich denke, dass wir in einem Riesenprojekt sind seit dem Zweiten Weltkrieg, wobei Israel Vorhut ist, ein riesen rassistischen Projekt, die Welt wieder zu kolonisieren. Und jetzt haben wir nicht mehr die Sowjetunion, die manchmal gesagt hat, stopp. Und wir haben ein Riesenprojekt, die ganze muslimische und islamische Welt. Wir hatten ethnische Säuberung in dem Irak. Wir haben ziemlich rassistische Ansichten gegenüber Afghanistan, würde ich sagen. Das wird auch trainiert. Wir haben auch in den USA, trotzdem, dass wir ein afroamerikanischer Präsident, Riesengefängnisse voller hauptsächlich Schwarzen, ja. Wir haben eine Resegregierung in der Industrie mit Schwarz und Weiß, so in Texas, ich komme gerade wieder aus Texas, dass man tatsächlich wieder Segregation einführt. Und ich frage nur, ob es nicht unter NATO würde ich als ein Allianz der Kolonialmächte der weißen Menschen auch sehen, die jetzt sagt, die können die ganze Welt. Frage ist es nicht besser, Israel als vielleicht als ein Teil dieses Systems und dieses Riesenprojekts darzustellen? Danke.
Geht das so? Ja. Erst eine Frage an Herrn Abunimah. Erstens eine Verständnisfrage. In welchem Rahmen war diese Madrider Konferenz? Und jetzt eine inhaltliche Frage dazu. Wie weit sind da die Deklarationen von Einfluss auf die internationale Gemeinschaft? Und die Frage an Herrn Ilan Pappe. Also erst muss ich nochmal sagen, ihr habt so fantastisch Englisch gesprochen, dass sogar ich es verstanden habe, ohne Übersetzung. Ja, ich habe vor kurzem Jeff Halper gehört und der hat betont, dass es nicht nur die kolonisatorische Dimension war des Zionismus, sondern auch eine positiv zu betrachtende. Da hätte ich gerne Ihre Einstellung dazu.
Soll ich noch mal kurz sagen, die erste Frage von Waltraud bezog sich darauf, dass sie sagte, Besatzung beenden, wie es hier anscheinend gefordert wurde, mehrfach, habe ich gar nicht so gehört, aber egal, das sei doch ein zu kurz gegriffener Vorschlag, das würde nur zu einer Zwei-Staaten-Lösung führen, wobei dann Israel das Problem gelöst hätte für sich und nun auch nur noch die Palästinenser aus Israel loswerden müsste. Das war also Ihre skeptische Frage. An wen? Alle. An beide.
Right. I think the first question Ali would deal with in any case, but I will just say that I agree, of course, that one of the dangers of the two-state solution is indeed that it can seal the fate of the Palestinians inside Israel as a domestic issue of a Jewish state and not an issue which is at all relevant for the international community. And I think it's part of the basic problem of the two-state solution, that it shrinks the Palestine issue geographically, demographically. A peace solution is successful when it is inclusive, when it includes as many people as possible who are affected by a conflict. The peace process of the two-state solution excludes most of the people who are victims of the conflict, and therefore has very little chance of surviving, and because of that there will be also a danger for the Palestinian community inside Israel. The second question, I do agree, it was rather a comment, not a question. I do agree that there is a bigger international project in place. I don't think it's a colonialist project. I think it's an imperialist project, and there is a difference between imperialism and colonialism. But I remember being a former member of the Israeli Communist Party, and I remember the meetings with very nice friends from the Palestine, from the PFLP and the PDFLP, from people who tried to convince us, and I remember that from Zionist history as well, that we should wait for a kind of an international revolution, and that would bring with it the liberation of Palestine. Well, the international revolution hasn't come, and Palestine is not liberated. And therefore I say that while, of course, in principle, I would like to be part of a larger project of transformation, I think we all are committed to one specific cause in life, inspired by the universal cause. My sense is that if I were born in South Africa to a white family, during the apartheid days, I would put apartheid in South Africa before Palestine. And nobody could have blamed me for doing that. I am putting Palestine at the center. And because I said before, it's not a complex story, I think we are entitled to move on, even at the price of not totally undermining the international project of imperialism, the problems of capitalism, and the very dismal record of human rights elsewhere. I think that what we are missing in the case of Palestine is an understanding that this is not about a quality of life. It's about life itself. It's not about coexistence between Arabs and Jews. It's about the existence of Palestinians. We don't have time. We don't have time. This is urgent. This is very urgent. The way that the Israeli military and political elite understands the situation is the following. We have a moment of opportunity to finalize the Zionist project by determining what part of Palestine would be ours through negotiations or through unilateral actions. Doesn't matter. And we'll determine how many Palestinians would be there and under what conditions. And we can still do it because of American support, because of European support, because of Arab impotence, because of the fragmentation of the Palestinian condition, all these things. And I think what we are trying to convey to you, because we are not alone, because we are part of a growing civil society of people from Israel, from Palestine, from outside of Palestine, we are not afraid of politicians. We are not afraid of political elites. We don't buy into the story that those who have money and power are the only people who can determine the fate of other people. We believe that we can change it as well, and we will continue to do this. And therefore, in the case of Palestine, I think we should focus on Palestine in this meeting and in this project without, of course, forgetting the international dimension. Finally, the positive side of Zionism, according to Jeff Alper. It's always difficult because these are all good friends of mine. Really, they are. I mean, we have been in the movement or in the struggle for so many years. But I think you need to get out of Israel to get rid of even the last remaining little viruses that are called Zionism. It's difficult. Felicia knows it. It's not easy to clean it. Really, believe me. When you are there, and I think it makes sense, when you are there, when you live there, of course there are positive, it's not the positive side of Zionism. Zionism, as far as the Palestinians are concerned, as the late Edward Said had said, has nothing good to offer. Not even like this. As far as Jews are concerned, of course. Of course, my family, who was kicked out of Germany, and had they stayed, they would have been killed by the Nazis. Some of them found a refuge in Palestine. And the Zionist movement brought them over there. I love the Hebrew language. Fine. And we have a very good medical system, not a bad educational system. But so did the whites in South Africa have it. And probably had the Nazis been allowed to continue, maybe Germany would have been quite a nice and comfortable state for Aryans. Undoubtedly. So Zionism has some positive sides. But this has nothing to do with the Palestinians. It is bad news. But I think, seriously speaking, that at the bottom line, every person, even if he's a Zionist, is entitled to aspire to decent, respectable, and dignified human life. And the only way of making people in Israel enjoying, like many other people around the world, dignified, respectful life is to get rid of Zionism. So I don't think we should, in any case, give any good marks to Zionism, because if we do that, we separate the Zionist project from its victims. And we cannot. Thank you.
Okay, ich glaube, Samir, hast du...
They always
du hast,
discriminate
okay.
against the Palestinians.
Yes.
Hallo.
Yes, okay.
We're trying to make it
Hallo?
to give other people
No, take your time.
yeah, okay. All right. Is my microphone on? Okay, it is. All right. I couldn't hear. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay. I want to just address a few of the points quickly. Starting with the last point Ilan made, let me put it another way. Let's imagine that in 1985, the apartheid regime in South Africa announced that it had invented a cure to cancer. And really imagined that it had done that. No doubt the entire world would benefit from this. But would we then say, okay, that's great. We're so grateful that you can continue to oppress black people? I don't think that would be the right answer. Now, I think the lady who asked the first question is exactly, well, I want to say this, the question here, yes, is exactly right. Any attempt to repartition Palestine in a so-called two-state solution will not lead to the fantasy of two states living side by side in peace. Every previous example of a kind of an ethnic partition shows that it will lead to ethnic cleansing. And we don't have to guess about this because the Israelis themselves are saying it. The Israeli Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman put it this way. He said, well, if we have a Palestinian state in the West Bank, and then in Israel we still have more than 1 million Palestinians, then you have one Palestinian state, 1.5 Palestinian states and half a Jewish state. That's what he says. And he says very openly, so we must get rid of the Palestinians from inside Israel. And he gave this proposal, he made this proposal in the UN General Assembly in September. And he's not the only one, because other Israelis are saying it, and you read in the Israeli press every day articles trying to legitimize this idea. And what examples do they use? They use the examples of the Sudeten Germans, they use the examples of the population, so-called population exchange between Turkey and Greece, and they say, well, so what's the difference? The difference is now is 2010. It's not 1923, it's not 1945. We now have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have the UN Charter, and we cannot repeat these things. We cannot repeat these massive violations of human rights. So you're exactly right. An attempt to create a two-state solution would most likely result in the ethnic cleansing, or at very least, the increasing victimization of Palestinians within Israel, not to two states living side by side in peace. Regarding the question about the Madrid conference, that conference was simply an initiative of academics and activists. There was our good friend Carlos in Spain.
Carlos.
Yes. Who initiated it and said, let's have this conference. Exactly as
Not
he...
the terrorist.
Not Carlos the Jackal, yes. Carlos...
Carlos the peacemaker.
Yes, Carlos... I'm going to tell you his name because I don't remember it. To give him the proper credit. I'll find it.
I will look for it.
Here it is. Carlos Prieto del Campo. He was one among several academics and activists who said, let's do this, and invited us to Spain, and they got this conference accepted as part of an annual summer university that they do. In other words, they used the resources that they could find to do it, just as here you have this conference. So this was a civil society initiative, as this conference is. And I know that there are people here from Munich and from Berlin and from other cities in Germany. So I would say to you, repeat this conference in Munich and Berlin, but with more people and different people, as well as the people here. That's how these ideas will influence the international community. It won't be because Barack Obama or Angela Merkel says let's do it. It will be because the civil society does it. The final point, just 10 seconds, regarding the international situation. The only point I want to make about this, we see now a very dangerous connection between the policies and practices of Israel and a process of Israelification in the United States and Europe. That European governments and policies are starting to see the world like Israel sees the world. And we see the spreading Islamophobia, which Israel is encouraging. Israel is saying, oh, our problem is not that we took the Palestinians' land and we should give it back to them. The problem is they're Muslims and they're crazy. This is what Israel wants everyone to believe. And the far-right politicians in Europe are saying the same thing. And they're saying we have to stand with Israel, who are facing the same threat as us from the Muslims. And this is what Geert Wilders is saying in the Netherlands. This is what the far-right parties are saying in Italy. And we see worrying trends in Germany. And the question I want to ask is, who is standing up to it? And are the people who are standing up to it as loud as those racists and Islamophobes? Because we don't hear them being as loud yet. And this is something that is very important for German and European civil society to confront.
Ja, dazu fühle ich mich genötigt, kurz zu sagen, wir versuchen da laut Stellung zu nehmen, aber es ist wirklich insofern sehr schwer, als es ist sehr schwer, Stellung zu nehmen, weil dieser islamophobe Diskurs im Grunde in etwas bemäntelter Form von der Regierung, in Parteien, Frauenbewegung und so weiter allgegenwärtig ist. Also es ist nicht eine Minorität, die diesen Diskurs führen würde, leider. Aber es ist ein sehr wichtiger Punkt für uns. Ja, wir haben leider nicht mehr sehr viel Zeit, auch weil die Übersetzerinnen und Übersetzer allmählich müde werden. Auf jeden Fall. Ja.
Deswegen habe ich die ganze Zeit meine Hand.
Ja.
Mikrofon.
Okay. Ja. Ja.
Ich habe echt meine Hand. Als Libanese wollte ich nur sagen, die Ein-Staat-Lesung ist nicht nur eine Lesung für Palästina, sondern für die ganze Umgebung, besonders für Libanon. Und das, was ich sagen will, als Libanese, ich habe genug linke Libanese, die ich kenne, und ägyptische Linken auch, und die sind für eine Staatlesung. Das wird eine Staatlesung in Palästina, eine Lesung für die ganze Umgebung, weil 2 Staatlesungen ist eine zionistische Staat und eine korrupte Staat. Und das ist keine Lesung. Nur eine Staatlesung wird eine demokratische, säkulare Staatenlösung. Das ist wichtig für mich. Säkulare, das war mal ein Muster im Libanon, aber das hat Israel gestört. Und deswegen der Bürgerkrieg im Libanon. Und wir haben Angst, demnächst im Libanon wird ein Bürgerkrieg geben zwischen Schiiten und Sunniten, wie früher war zwischen Muslimen und Christen. Und deswegen, das wird überhaupt eine Lösung für die ganze Umgebung. Und die Frage jetzt stelle ich, gibt es unter arabischer Bevölkerung, nicht Staaten, Bevölkerung, Stimmen? Ich folge schon seit Jahren. Ich gucke immer an YouTube, Ilan Pappe, Ali Abunimah, Haidar, besonders Haidar zum Beispiel in Gaza. Das ist eine Unterdrückung. Ich betone das nochmal. Das ist der größte Konzentrationslager in der Welt. Die Frage ist an Haidar auch, gilt. Gibt es arabische Stimmen, die mit euch auch zusammenarbeiten? Und wenn nein, bitte soll das geben. Das ist die als Literatur, als Sakafi, wie man sagt, für eine Staatenlösung in die ganze arabische Umgebung. Vielen Dank.
Jetzt sind zwei gleichzeitig aufgestanden. Ja, ist ganz lange, ich weiß. Müsst ihr euch miteinander einigen.
Also meine Frage ist an Herrn Ilan Pappe. Ich glaube auch, dass Einstaatenlösung sehr realistisch ist. Aber wir haben hier das Gefühl gehabt, dass es irgendwie, okay, so morgen ist eine Einstaatenlösung und es ist fertig. Ich glaube nicht, dass es so einfach ist. Ich glaube, man muss sehr, sehr viel tun und es gibt ganz viele Schritte erstmal, um das zu erreichen. Meine Frage ist, glauben Sie auch oder glauben Sie überhaupt, dass vielleicht auch eine Zwei-Staaten-Lösung ist auch ein Schritt, um dann später auch eine Staaten-Lösung zu erreichen?
Und Inge Höger davor, ja genau.
Ja, ich kann vielleicht kurz auch noch berichten zum Bundestag. Es hat ja in dieser Woche eine heftige Terrorismuswarnung gegeben, im Grunde um zu verhindern, dass der Protest an dieser Bundesregierung gestern an den Reichstag getragen wird. Und das alles wird mit Islamophobie begründet, mit der islamischen Gefahr. Und es ist wirklich sehr schwierig für uns hier in Deutschland. Aber um aufs Thema zu kommen, also ich finde es erstmal total gut, Stimmen aus Palästina zu hören und wirklich zu hören, wie da die Vorstellungen sind. Ich denke, wir sollten auch aufhören, als deutsche Linke Modelle für andere Länder zu entwickeln, weder für Afghanistan noch für Palästina. Ich kann mich aber auch selber, wie wahrscheinlich viele andere hier, auch noch gut an die Rede von Arafat vor der UNO erinnern, wo er ja auch schon mal für einen säkularen, demokratischen Staat Palästina geworben hat. Und seitdem hat sich die Situation ja eigentlich ständig verschlechtert. Also wir haben die sogenannten Friedensgespräche, die ständig immer eine Verschlechterung der Situation der Palästinenserinnen und Palästinenser bewirkt haben. Wir haben den zunehmenden Siedlungsbau, wir haben die Mauer, wir haben das Gefängnis Gaza. Ich bin immer ein bisschen ratlos, wenn ich diskutieren soll, wie kann eine Lösung für Palästina aussehen und was können wir auch in Deutschland dazu beitragen, wie können wir gemeinsam diese Vision für eine gerechte Lösung in Palästina erreichen und wie können wir alle dazu beitragen. Das ist meine Frage.
Yeah, my question is for Ali Abunimah and Ilan Pappe. I believe in the one-state solution also, and I think it's the most doable, reasonable, and fair solution ever presented. But my question is, we know that there are 11 million Palestinians in the world. These Palestinians will go back to Palestine, or whatever you want to call it. You want to call it binational, you want to call it Israel, you want to call it Palestine, you want to call it Israel, like Gaddafi said. They will go back, and these people will be the majority. The balance will shift. Now, what will happen to the Jews in there? I mean, the name will change back to Palestine. That's for sure. Second, like the language, Arabic will go back to being the main language. Now, what will happen to the Jews in there? How are they going to define themselves? Like Mr. Ilan Pappe, how he's going to define himself? He's going to define himself like a Palestinian Jew, or a Jew, or I don't know. Personally, I don't like the idea of defining yourself by your religion. The second question is for Mr. Ilan Pappe. It's a bit connected to the first one, and maybe it's a private question. How do you define yourself? Thank you.
Ich glaube, jetzt sollten wir diese Fragen beantworten und anschließend haben wir noch eine kleine Runde und dann müssen wir leider schließen. Es ist klar, dass es da großen Diskussionsbedarf gibt, aber wir können ja auch noch nachher uns miteinander unterhalten, direkt. Eigentlich nachher, ja. Ja.
We answering now. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I missed it. There's two short points, and the rest Ali will deal with, I'm sure. About two points which come out from the question. One has to do with the distribution of labor in the movement, I think, and what we try to do for the cause of Palestine, and the other one has to do with generally the Jewish situation in a post-conflict Palestine, one-state solution, and in it, how do I define myself? I'll come to that in the end. I think that a very important issue is a distribution of labor. What is everyone doing for the cause that we believe in? And I really think that it's for the first time through the BDS campaign, through the boycott, divestment and sanction campaign, it's for the first time that Europeans, and I will talk about Europeans, have a very clear mandate of what they can do. I don't think they are invited enthusiastically to help Palestinians and Jews to decide of what is the best way to live after the conflict is over. This is something which would have to be dealt by the people themselves. The refugees, the Palestinians who live in Palestine, and the Jews who live in what used to be Palestine. This is not a question for the German left to decide whether there would be a two-state solution or a one-state solution. This is our problem. The mandate for the German people in particular, but to Europeans in general, is to redress the balance, to change the way the political system in the West and in Germany is working. It's not a very democratic system when it comes to Palestine. The vast majority of people in Europe, and this is even scientifically proved nowadays with the help of surveys and statistical research, the vast majority of people in Europe are pro-Palestinians and support the Palestinian cause. And the governments do not reflect this support. So this is not a democratic society when it comes to the question of Palestine. So you have a role. It's unbelievable that German members of parliament and ministers are afraid to talk about Israel. This is not, I don't accept any of their explanations, even in the Linke Party, by explaining to us that you have to understand this is Germany. This is Germany and that's why you have to speak, not the other way around. This is Germany and therefore I cannot speak. This is what we are looking for. We are looking for something that we already got there and you have already got there, and I think the whole society around us should get to. And the distribution of labor means that turning the state of Israel into a pariah state, because it is a rogue state, is something that only you can do. And this is enough to put on your plate. And I don't want the one-state or two-state debate in this respect undermine the solidarity movement in Europe. It doesn't make any sense. You can still work with people who I think wrongly believe that for some reason a two-state solution is a viable solution, but you can still work with them in boycotting the next, I don't know, Israeli opera that comes to Berlin, or the next conference on human rights with 3 Israeli experts on human rights. They are experts on human rights, but they should go to a different conference, not to the conference on human rights. Finally, about definition and the Jews. I think that the Palestinians in this distribution of labor have an agency, as we say in English, and definitely Ali addresses this in his book, and many others do. What is the place of the Jews in a liberated state, in a democratic state? And I think that exactly the model of a secular democratic state is one where I don't have to define myself. I don't have to define myself in a secular democratic state. The only place I have to define myself is when the state says it has a national identity, an ethnic identity, a religious identity. If the state has an identity, I have to decide whether my identity fits the identity of the state, or if my identity is problematic because it does not fit the identity of the state. But if the state says, as I think we both believe in, a state for all its citizens, then my definition is, in that state, I am a citizen of the state. And it's nobody's business what is my religion, my affiliation, and what do I do in my bedroom in the afternoon. Nobody's business. And then, but I'm open-minded. I think that this is such a big revolution in the life of all of us that when my friends, and I have very good friends, talk about a binational solution because they feel that Jews would have trouble in totally giving up the idea of a collective ethnic identity, that after, as Azmi Bishara says, after 3 generations of sort of Jewish existence in Palestine, there is a local ethnic Jewish identity. And there is, we know that there is. And that this identity, at least for a while, would have to be respected within either a binational state or a multicultural state. I have no problem in engaging with it, but I think, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, what is really important, if you notice, what we are doing here is what we should have done 63 years ago. We are asking the Palestinians to discuss the place of the Jews in their homeland. Whereas the Zionist movement says, we will tell the Palestinian what would be their fate in the future homeland. And the Zionist answer until today is, you have no place in your own homeland. The Palestinian answer is, whether it's a binational or a secular democratic state, is, you have a place. You have a place in our homeland, although you came as colonizer. Although you came as settlers, but you are 3rd generation there, you have a place there, we'll discuss this place, but we can only do it as free people, as someone said yesterday.
Thank you. Well, I agree with everything Ilan said. That's what you were worried about, that we would agree on everything. And I'll say just something about the questions that were asked. I agree that a one-state solution would also be a solution for the rest of the region, because so much of the problems in the region is a result of the external support for Israel as a racist state in the region, and the need for Arab regimes that go along with this and that serve Israel's interests and the United States' interests, as we see many of the Arab regimes do, against the wishes of their people. And this is why we can't have democracy in Arab countries. It's not permitted, because if you had democracy, people would not vote for governments that have peace treaties with Israel or trade relations with Israel or other things. So you have to have undemocratic governments in order to maintain Israel as an apartheid state. So it's a regional problem as well. In terms of Arab voices, I'm glad there was a reference to Yasser Arafat's speech. I was going to quote it myself. But in 1974, he gave a brilliant speech to the United Nations. And with all due respect to Yasser Arafat, he wasn't a brilliant speaker, and certainly not a brilliant thinker or writer. I might be offending people here if I say that, but that's the truth. That particular speech was largely written by Edward Said. And it remains a brilliant document. If you go online and look up the speech which Arafat gave to the UN in 1974, where he laid out the vision of a single state, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing, when we talk about the future of Palestine, we talk about the place where Palestinians and Jews will live together, but on the basis of non-discrimination. So that vision is not new. I didn't invent it. Ilan Pappe didn't invent it. Haidar Eid didn't invent it. But I think what we are doing is bringing it back, or trying to bring it back. And it's true, it has been not totally absent, but marginalized in Arab discourse. But it's also now coming back. And you see this discussion happening even on Al Jazeera and places like that. You know, when my book came out a few years ago, nobody talked about this, and people thought, you know, it's stupid to even talk about it. Why talk about it? Today, the Zionists are going crazy because of how fast this idea is spreading. And that's an important shift, a paradigm shift that's happening. Regarding the question about can a two-state solution be a step towards one state? Well, if you listen carefully to what we said, then you would know the answer is no. Because saying that two states is a step towards one state is like saying slavery is a step towards freedom. Or apartheid is a step towards democracy. You can't get there from here. It's a dead end. And not only is it's not a benign solution which simply keeps things as they are. As I was saying, I believe a two-state solution will not keep the status quo. It will lead to ethnic cleansing of Palestinians within Israel. So it's not only unworkable and unjust, but it's a dangerous idea. And we see more and more the danger of it emerging. Regarding the question of Jews when they are a minority, often this is talked about as if there is a choice. You will hear Israelis or Zionists say, but if there's a one-state solution, we'll be a minority. No, you'll be a minority anyway. You're a minority now. Within historic Palestine, which is controlled totally by the Israeli government, some people think Haidar lives under the Hamas government. But the Hamas government actually doesn't decide if Haidar enters or leaves Gaza, or if there's chocolate in Gaza or building materials in Gaza. Swiss chocolate? Okay. Yeah, because Swiss chocolate is neutral. Yeah. But this is all decided by the Israeli government. So you already have one government in Palestine, and within historic Palestine, Jews are already now 50% and probably already a minority. In 10 years and 20 years, they will be maybe 45% or 40%, we don't know. And this is why the Israelis are panicked and trying to find ways to get rid of more Palestinians. So the choice, the fact is, Jews will be a minority. The question is, how will they exist as a minority? Will they exist as an apartheid minority ruling over the majority, which is the direction they seem to want to go? Or will they exist as a community among the other communities in the country? And I believe they should exist as the latter. And recognize also the cost that Zionism has imposed on Jews and their cultures. Because Zionism tries to create a monoculture. A single, you may have seen the former chief rabbi of Israel, Ovadia Yosef, recently, Abdullah Yusuf, who he was born as, in Iraq. Every Saturday in his sermon, he says, curse those Arabs and damn them, those snakes, those dogs, whatever. The other day he called for a plague on the Arabs. Well, Ovadia Yusuf is an Arab. So when Abdullah Yusuf, the spiritual leader of Shas, calls for a plague on the Arabs, who's he calling a plague on? See, the majority of Jews in Israel today, of Jews, are of Arab origin. This is something people don't realize. So Zionism has created a situation where you're not allowed to be a Jew and an Arab. Liberation means that a Jew can be an Arab and an Arab can be a Jew also. So I believe that an end to Zionist apartheid will also liberate Jews and free them from the cultural restrictions that Zionism imposes on them, and allow them to rediscover or recreate or develop or whatever all the aspects of Jewish heritage and culture that existed all around the world and in the Arab world as well. And some things will stay. The Hebrew language, I also have done my best to learn Hebrew. I'm not fluent, but I also think Hebrew is a beautiful language. You know, there's no reason not to learn Hebrew. You know, the beautiful thing about a language is you can say anything you want in it. You don't have to say Zionist things in Hebrew. You can say anti-Zionist things in Hebrew. So I have no problem with the Hebrew language. I think it's wonderful. Its future will be secure. The question is, the longer we wait, the harder it's going to be. So we don't have a choice about the demographics. We only have a choice of how we relate to each other. And we have to make good choices.
Ja, es tut mir wahnsinnig leid. Okay. Also ganz ehrlich gesagt, ich habe das Gefühl, es sind gerade auch sehr schöne abschließende Worte gefallen. Und wir haben... Ja.